Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the third video in our study on the harmonic development of human thinking from prehistory to the modern times. So this is the third video, and I'm calling this video the rebirth of music. So the last video was the death of music, and this one is the rebirth of music. And I'm symbolizing the rebirth of music with Monteverdi's Vespers. And so we should hear a very significant difference from the music in the last video and the music right now. So let's have a listen. Let's play and see what happens. So this is the rebirth of European music. We can see the rebirth of Europe over here with Leonardo da Vinci. We'll explain this picture in a little minute. That's like plain chant. Oh yeah, Europe is back, baby. Look at this. One more time. See some of the instruments? So that is just huge orchestration and a massive celebration of polyphony and harmony. And that's basically, we're back. So this is Leonardo da Vinci here. Here's a little quote from him. There are three classes of people: those who see when they are shown, and those who do not see. So another thing I'm trying to show is the connection between polymath type of thinking and musical kind of harmony, this way of thinking, abstract way of thinking. And so we can see here, this is what he called the Vitruvian Man, and it's Cosmography del Minor Mondo. And we're going to see that again and again. And that's basically, you can see the cosmos in small if you study humans. So this is basically heaven on earth, that kind of a thing. So he's taking a rational approach, and you can see that the world has now been measured in feet and arms and hands and cubits and yards, and it's all very human. So this is a rebirth of music. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pretty much just have a quick look at the zeitgeist of the times. And the zeitgeist of the times, that means the spirit of the times, it was recover the Holy Land and anything else you can grab on the way out. So I'll play a little video from The Simpsons. Oh my gosh. Play a little video from The Simpsons here.
Thieves everywhere. The strong must protect the sweet. The sweet.
Homer?
In America, first you get the sugar, then you get the power, then you get the women.
Homer! Homer!
What?
I want you to forget about guarding the stupid sugar. You're being completely paranoid.
Oh, am I? Am I really? Aha!
Hello.
All right, pal. Where'd you get the sugar for that tea?
I nicked it when you let your guard down for that split second. And I'd do it again. Goodbye.
You see, Marge?
Here you go, right? So one of the things we have to remember here is that there was a lot of sugar in the Middle East. There was a lot of wealth, knowledge, and power. And from the 1100s, as the last video, they just sent crusade after crusade, the Holy Land Crusades. There was 1 to 8 up until 1291. They ended in the Siege of Acre, and you can see Acre is down here. So that was when the first sieges ended. They got down here and they couldn't go further. So they got close, but they didn't recapture the Holy Land. And there was Crusades 1 to 8, the Royal Crusades. There was the Children's Crusade, where children just decided they'd head off and crusade. People's Crusade, there was missions and pilgrimages, so they'd set up their kind of like fortification. Spanish Inquisition, so there's even crusades within Europe against themselves. And then even after the first round of crusades in 1291, there was 3 further rounds of crusades. One of them is just called the Shepherd's Crusade, where some teenage shepherd said she had a vision, and all of the teenage shepherds decided they would crusade and go down and help out. I don't know. So this is what we're starting with the war. So one of the things that I'm trying to get across here is a little bit about what the world looked like back then. You know, what were we coming out of? You know, what were we thinking about? And so it was the Black Death, where there was 50 million dead. 50% of Europe died. 1 out of every 2. And this is a painting of a representative called the Triumph of Death. I mean, it's just so grim. And that's where we got things like the Dance Macabre, the Dance of the Dead, where they would make songs and dance around graveyards. And we had these gothic things, and we had mass persecutions of foreigners, aliens, the other, so Jewish people. And, you know, it was a strange time, and it was all over Europe. You can see it there, the timeline of it. So there was, after the Black Death, there was massive change. There was massive revolts. And so we can see that after the Black Death, then there was two wars. There was a 100-year war, and there was the 30-year war. We see them again. And it's basically just all of Europe fighting the Middle East. It's insane. So there's quite a difficulty in framing the narrative. It's Catholic versus Protestants everywhere in Europe. There's an explosion of science and culture and free thinking. There's mass civil and state war, town versus town, country versus country, continent versus continent. There was faith versus science. I don't know why that C isn't there. There was lots of hidden societies, which we can explain in a minute, so it's not all known. There was papal states versus princes, principalities. So there was the Rome versus people who had money. There was a mercantile class. There was a new business class, and they had money now and fancy clothes and nice things, and they could think for themselves, I think. And then they didn't need authority from the church or anything. And then there was past versus future. So it's difficult to frame because everything happened everywhere, all at once, all at the same time. And I'm going to use music as a battle for the cognitive landscape. So that's the narrative I'm going to try and approach. So it's going to jump around because you can't really do a linear narrative. So what I have here in this page is some of the fighters, some of the contestants. And we have on one side here, we have Martin Luther, who is the start of he put up the 95 Theses, put them on the door for a bit of a chat about the problems in the church, and it all went crazy. And he started to protest against the papal states and against Rome rule, and they started the Protestant movement, the protesters. And he was protesting quite a few things. He was protesting Rome. He was protesting the way of thinking about religion. And so he said, reason is a whore, the greatest enemy that faith has. It never comes to the aid of spiritual things, but more frequently than not struggles against the divine world, treating with contempt all that emanates from God. So he's kind of anti-reason. He's kind of German, he's kind of religion, doesn't really like reason, doesn't really like Germany, or doesn't really like Italy. Next, we have Francis Bacon in England, and he's another way of thinking is an empiricist, so it's the start of the scientific revolution, and he says knowledge is power, and man prefers to believe what he prefers to be true. So this is kind of an attack on the church, but also an attack on general cognition, and he's basically an empiricist. He says that knowledge comes only from observing sensory experience and empirical evidence, so kick the tires of reality to make sure that it's true. He developed something called a blank slate. He thought that humans were born like a blank slate, and then you fill them up with information and they become things, which is not quite true. And I have a problem with him and his way of thinking because knowledge is not power. It's knowledge. It's a different thing. It's Sophia. And then man prefers to believe what he prefers. Man prefers to believe what he prefers to believe. I think he's thinking about himself. And if you could look up the King's Drops in reference to Francis Bacon, and I think you'd be shocked. And then he also ended in debt and disgrace. I beseech your lordship to be merciful to a broken reed, he said before he was sent into prison for a couple of days. He was let away with it, though. Aren't they all? And then the next one we have in the middle here. So Francis Bacon is an Anglican. He's kind of in between. So he's an Anglican. He's a scientist and an empiricist, but also he wants to protect the church. He's a Protestant, but a form of Protestant, kind of a lighter form than Martin Luther in a way. So English Protestantism. And then we have, we're still protesting. And then we have Galileo Galileo. So his father we'll see. His father we'll see in a minute. And he's a complete scientist, modern scientist. I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with a sense of reason and intellect has intended us to forgo their use. It is only in order to shield your ignorance that you put the Lord at every turn to the refuge of a miracle. So they were quite aggressive towards each other. Now, the next person further along the line here is Giordano Bruno, who's not well known. And up in the corner there, just that little image, we have a picture of Spinoza. And they're both mystics, kind of Hermetic tradition. And he's not. Spinoza is well known with Hegel, German, but Giordano is not well known. But a lovely quote. He was he used to go into universities, and he's a lovely quote. The universe is then one, infinite, immobile. It is not capable of comprehension and therefore is endless and limitless, and to that extent infinite and interminable and consequently immobile. Now, he was vocal about his opinions, and Spinoza was not. Spinoza hid his work, and it was released posthumously after he died, and with good reason, because Giordani here was open, and he said that it's unmediated knowledge. You don't need the church, you don't need God, you don't need the roads, you don't need anything. And so he was excommunicated by Martin Luther. He says, you're not a Protestant. And then he was executed by Pope Urban over here. So it's a very dangerous position to take, and I think that it still is. And then over we have Pope Urban VIII here, right? And we can see beside him there all his gold coins with his head on it. So we think, if you got your own head on your own gold currency, that means you own the bank. That means it's your bank. You're pretty wealthy. And so we will see what he did. He oversaw, there was that 30-year war that we saw. I don't know if we saw it yet. We might see that slide in a minute. But he oversaw 21 years of it. He tried to expand the Papal States through military acquisitions. So they had a military arm called the Knight Templar, and he profited from the sales of indulgences. So this is one of the major problems with Martin Luther. They used to go around selling. Everyone believed that their relatives were in heaven or in kind of a waiting position, purgatory, and they would send around these traveling fellas who say, if you give us money, we'll pray for your dead relatives, and if you love them, they'll get into heaven quicker, and so forth. And so, it was a bit of a scam. And they needed this money, the Pope needed this money for his wars, his crusades. So we can see a bit of the spectrum there. I'm sorry now there's not so much music, but we will see the fight now in a minute. So we see the spectrum in thinking. We have Martin Luther over there, who's faith-based, really. He will use reason, but doesn't trust it, doesn't like it. We have Francis Bacon there, who's kind of gone down the empiricist route and says, test it out, but really he's making a lot of mistakes, I believe. And then we have Galileo Galilei, who's just straightforward scientist, really. He's not making any decisions, he's just looking. We have the mystic in the middle who got killed and everyone hates him, Giordani, and then over the point we have the bank, the royal military bank, Papal States, authority. So that's the fighting grounds for music, the mind, the mental landscape. Okay, so now we're going to start getting into the musical minds a little bit more. Okay, so this time period is about harmonic structure, and that's what it's about. So we're going to see a little quote here from Plato over in the corner. And what does Plato say? Plato says that musical innovation is full of danger to the state, for when modes of music change, the fundamental laws of the state always change with them. Oh, Plato. Oh, you're very right, Plato. And then right beside him here we see a circle. And this circle represents the 12 notes on a musical scale. So if you imagine a guitar, you can imagine the guitar string, and you can just turn it into a circle, and you put the notes on the line on the circle. And the big problem is that you can divide up a line any way you want. You could have a million little points on it, or you could have 6 little points or 5 little points, or you can make the points equally distant, or you could do whatever you want with the points. And so there was a lot of fighting over 2 main arguments. Number one, how should we organise the harmonies on individual instruments? So how do we tune? What scaling systems should we use? How do we tune the things? And then number two, how do we organise music? The harmonics, once the instruments are tuned, and they're all in tune, hopefully, how do we actually make the songs harmonic then? Like, how do we do this? And so there was a range of competing views. As we can see, these were in different parts of Europe and were held by different types of people. So over here on the left there, you have Pythagorean rationale, and so that's the old view, religious, eternal, spiritual. In the middle there, we have Vincenzo Galileo's father, and he was for equal division. And he said some interesting things. We'll see him in a minute. We saw Schlick and mean tone is another way of dividing up it. We saw Al-Umami, Al-Din, and he said that there should be 17 notes of equal division. And then we're going to see a new beast on the planet Earth, and we're going to see Joseph Savier with his acoustics. So we're going to see him, okay? So down the bottom here, I have some representations of different ways of tuning and different ways of splitting up Pythagorean and quarter comma mean tone, and how this relates to the music theory and so forth. So we'll move on. And we look at why tuning became super important, because there was so many new instruments. We had the organ, we had the pedal clavichord, the tambourine, the Jewish harp was a rhythmic instrument. We had the mother and child virgin, was kind of a teaching thing, you know, there's 2 pianos on there. Double manual harpsichord there. We had some wind instruments like the recorder, the crumhorn, the early brass kind of things, with the lute, and then we had a very early violin called the liro di braccio, and there was an early cello as well. So there was a wide new instruments, and they all needed to be tuned, you know, so they all play nicely together. But what was most important, the most important tuning of them all, was the tuning of God's instrument, the organ. All right, so one of the popes, I can't remember, one of the popes, it might have been Pope Gregory II or one of them anyways, he said that there should be an organ in every church. All right, so it was the big draw of the town. You know, they didn't have TV or podcasts or TikTok back then. So the church would have a big organ, they'd do a big show on a Sunday, and no one had to work, and you'd go and get food. And there's even traditions in England where there's a day of the year where they all hang around and they hug the church. It's insane, you should see it. Now, one of the reasons this is important is because there was this belief in heavenly music, the choir of the angels, like we saw from Hildegard von Bingen last week. There was also this belief that music could bring you closer to God, but it was also dangerous. It could bring you closer to the eternal, and that it could heal you. So they also believed that these travelling monks and minstrels and singers, you know, the religious type, that they could heal you. So we're going to spend a little minute, because it's, I think, the most important instrument of all of the instruments. The lute and this really is it, and I think the organ is more important, especially for modern music. So
how to build
oh my gosh,
a pipe
sorry,
organ.
Sorry, my
For
friends.
centuries, it was the most complex man-made device in existence. And even today, it can take 20,000
I think it still
man-hours
is, like-
to build. Step 1. Build, lease, or inherit a 20,000 square foot cathedral without an organ. For a medium-sized church, your pipe organ will cost between $300,000 and $800,000. Step 2. Your pipe organ needs different sized pipes.
It's important to note that the pipe organ is a wind instrument, and that's something people don't always understand. When you have a piano, you have a hammer hitting strings. When you have an organ, you have wind moving through a
It
pipe.
matters that it's wind
Gather
because it's
5,000
infinite.
pipes and cut them
That
into
matters.
varying lengths, from
Organ can
3/4
make
of
an
inch
infinite
to
sound.
32 feet.
Guitar
To
or
see this
piano
concept
can't.
at work, cut off the corners of a straw to make a simple reed pipe. As the pipe is shortened, the pitch of the note rises. To produce extremely low notes, you need a giant pipe. Step 3. Your wind instrument needs wind.
I'm going to leave that one there. I can't remember what it is. It just kind of show you the manual and all. So what I want to show you now is that this is the view from the swell in Christchurch Cathedral in Dublin. You know, they're monstrous things, these things. Some of them have 64-foot long pipes. You know, it's a massive undertaking for a town to put together. And the largest pipe organ in the world has 33,000 pipes. So I want to show you what that means in terms of the tuning of them, that each pipe would have to be tuned individually.
I just happen to see that this has got really a lot of curves, so I'm taking some out by sort of counter curving on the backside, which will probably end up being too much, as in fact it was.
Look how delicate this work is. So there was pipes in, and one of the things is that because the pipe was in your local town, right? The church had the pipe. If you're a musician, you're gonna be playing for it. So you had to tune to that pipe. So there was different tunings, different pipes in different parts of the world. So in France, I think A was a little bit higher, in Germany was in the middle, and other countries a bit lower. So relative pitch hadn't been agreed across Europe. So music would fundamentally sound different depending on what town you went to, depending upon the tuning of the organ. And then again, the organ goes out of tune or in and out of tune in the winter, because in the summer the pipes heat up, they contract, and the pitch rises. But not all of them, because some of them, like the reeds, the pitch of them doesn't rise. So we'll have a listen. So it's a complicated instrument. It takes a lot of a lot of kind of thinking to put it together. So let's have a listen to one of them. Why are they so great? Yeah. I like, if you want to touch the infinite, like if you want to understand what eternally in harmonic, that the organ will do it. It's such an amazing sound. Okay, so the organ is very important. So tuning became very important. So I've made a little video here where I'm going to explain about tuning, because it can get very mathy and it can get very abstract and it can get very annoying. But all we're actually talking about is just dividing up bits of string, right? We have Pythagorean rhythm here, and it's just showing you that if you look there, you can see that the 12th fret, which is the octave, is exactly half the length of the string, because it's in an octave, and octaves are doubles. We saw that in geometric progressions. And other divisions of strings, or other divisions, these simple divisions. You can see the simple divisions over here. Now I'm going to give you a listen. I've made a little video. My friends, I've prepared a short demonstration in April. I'll turn it up a little bit. Oh, sorry guys. In Live 12 to show you a little bit about microtonality and the difference between just intonation, Pythagorean pure tuning, and equal division, EDO. It's a small difference, but it matters. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what all the fuss is about. So if I press play now, I've got a sine wave, and we can see it there. It's pure. And closer to God. Another sine wave to it at the exact same frequency, that's or health unison, and you can see it's also pure. But if I start to detune that sine wave, you can see that it starts to phase. It starts to cancel in and out. Okay, and it creates a kind of a beating effect. And by counting the number of beats, we can tell how far away we are from pure. Okay, the further we are away, the more beating there is, until eventually it becomes quite discordant. And this would be associated with bad things in life, bad for you, bad feelings. And then we could slowly resolve it back to pure. Okay. Bring your body through that process. More pure, like the octave. So if I go up an octave, 12 semitones, you can see that that's also pure. It's not moving. The fifth is reasonably pure, but there's problems with that. That's not the fifth. Sorry, I made a mistake. And the third is reasonably pure. Sorry, the fifth is reasonably pure, and the third is reasonably pure. So that matters, because the fifth and the third are the most important keys. You play them the most, especially in triads. So I'm going to turn off the second oscillator. I'm going to go back to the first oscillator. I'm going to change it to this waveform, because this waveform will have more harmonics in it. So you can see there's only one harmonic in a sine wave, just itself. And as I add in more, we get brighter and brighter, and we get more and more upper harmonics. So you're seeing the harmonic series there. Okay. So I'm going to put it onto a nice bright harmonic, which will be kind of annoying, but what it will do is it will quickly show us, hopefully, some of the problems that they were having. Okay, so right now we're listening to equal division. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to just intonation. So this was another tuning system that was useful for vocal drones, all right? So now we're listening to normal, what you'd be normally used to, and I'm going to switch over and listen to just intonation. And what you should notice is there's less beating. Sorry, no. Purer. Back to equal. Not as pure. More out of tune. Back to just purer. Now let's listen to the Pythagorean. Pythagorean 7 I want to use, because he really just used 7 notes. I am using called tetrachords. So it's not as pure as just. So let's move on to the Pythagorean. So the Pythagorean is better at fifths. So I have a lot of fifths in here. And then the subdominant fourth. And we can hear that that's quite nice. So like if it's C and G, then the G below C, so the fifth. You can hear it's a little bit rougher. Back onto Pythagorean. Nicer on fifths, it definitely is. If we go in, we might be able to see. There's Joseph Xavier. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Well, there was one part of this movie. Yeah, we look at the inharmonic. They could start to sound very out of tune. So that's just intonation using an awful lot of the black keys there, okay? So I designed this to sound out. If we go to equal, much nicer. Weird sounding. If we go to Pythagorean, Not as bad. Okay. So, sorry. So, what I was trying to show you there was there's these subtle differences, but that they create phase or purity, or you can move it off. And I only really looked at 3 of them that relate to what I want to do. So, Pythagorean tuning is best for monophonic music. It really sounds great if you use fifths, pure fifths. Just intonation is really good for vocal music. It sounds very nice on thirds. And we're going to hear some of that with Palestrina's music earlier on. So it's really pure and it's really gorgeous and doesn't beat, so it's very still sounding. And then mean tone is good if you want to modulate keys. So modulating keys means that you're moving around keys a lot. You know, you're going to be hitting the sharps and the flats, the black keys, and you could hear in the other ones that they weren't so good. So there was another system called equal temper, but we all know that because that's what we use. So these are the 3 that we didn't use, and so that was the fight that they were having for tuning. Okay, now the next, which mattered for all the instruments they have. Now the next kind of development that they had was in how to organize the harmonics in a song. All right, so they didn't have tonality yet; it hadn't been developed, and so this is in Germany and the lowlands. And what they developed was this idea of cantus firmus, polyphonic music. I'm going to explain it. It's called Desiree. And it is still sang today. It's super, super famous. It's about the end of the world. Yep. The final day of judgment. And this is what it sounds like. So this is called a cantus firmus, which means that it's the firm part of the chant, the part that you can't change, the part that you're given. So this part is 1,200 years old. I'm using MuseScore, which is free software. In polyphonic music, what you do is there are rules for counterpoint. So you can see that each point I'm creating a new point of a counterpoint, different point, all right? And so the rules are to create flowing counterpoint. And you can see it flows up and it flows down. And one of the things is that when one is flowing up, the other is going down. So they go in different directions and there's rules to it, okay? And one of the rules is that they should all sound independent. So, you know, they're all single voices for a single singer. And each one is like a little song. And so then when we put them together, using these rules, they should sound good. Let's have a listen. Oh, I think they sound pretty good. And then what I did is I put in a bass note to follow along, based on the other notes and based on the rules of counterpoint. Starting to sound fuller, bigger. We now have 3-part harmony, soprano, alto, tenor, bass. We've got 3-voice polyphony. 3-part. We've got nice flowing counterpoint. And then we add in our 4th line for 4-part harmony, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, SATB. And this, the 3rd line usually just fills in the gaps. So you can see it's kind of wiggling around the place and filling in the gaps. So we'll listen to it all together, and then we will hear, and hopefully you can understand now the difference between polyphonic music. If you're an electronic musician, you can think of it as 4 individual monophonic synthesizers as opposed to playing chords. You're playing 4 voices at the same time. Let's have a listen. Well. Okay, so I don't really know what I'm doing there. That's just me following the rules of cantus firmus. And so, cantus firmus, what I'm trying to do here is explain some of the words because they might be a bit alien to you. So, cantus firmus just means the hymn or the bit that you get, the little melody that you get. Polyphonic music means multiple lines of independent music. It doesn't mean chords. The job of the composer is to harmonize to a given melody, and then counterpoint is a set of rules. And you can see pictures. We've got counterpoint, first species, one point against another, second species, 1 against 2, third species, 1 against 4, and then I think this is 4th species where it kind of skips over the bar. And so there's all these rules for counterpoint. So what we have now is we have a wide range of instruments, a wide range of tuning options, a wide range of... It's basically kind of getting pretty chaotic right now, you know. And I'm going to add this in here, right? This frame here. This is the hermetic kind of outlook, and it's outside. It's always outside. It's always a part of everything, but outside of it. So it's kind of strange because they're hermits, like they want to live on their own, basically. And so I have a few pictures here to show you what it looks like. We have a 4-player chessboard here. That's an indication. They also believed in magic. This is the cross of the Rosicrucian cross. So this is much later, but you can see that it's full of symbols and kind of looks a bit electric, or, you know, this kind of thing. Freemasonry came out of this kind of a thing. So again, symbols and crafts. So they were Hermetics. They developed the Apprentice Germany and Master of Crafts. So there was this idea of magic. This is a picture here from John Flood or Robert Flood, and you can see that it's kind of like Leonardo da Vinci's one, where, you know, if you study man, you'll get to the universe. And so he was a great medicine person, and we also saw one of his books. He was one of these polymaths, maths and music, and he kind of gave up medicine altogether and just went totally magic. That was a science at the time. He was working for the king. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit about it. This is what they're into. Hermetism, we saw that last week. Heaven on earth, an embodied experience, ecstatic experience of reality that connects you to the infinite, and you don't need anything else for it, unmediated. So it's mystical, it's based on numerology, symbolism, sensible maths. So they want to develop a form of maths where you could kind of control your emotions and your spiritual being. Magical medicine and hidden knowledge. And so we can see a killer picture from them here, where they've got a kind of a house on wheels that's kind of semi-mechanical, semi-magic, and up at the top it says fraternity, brotherhood, and, you know, it's a kind of a, you know, this is what they thought their mind was like. You know, they could see the world, they could think of it, and do it all God. And again, these were the people that were persecuted and killed more than anyone. So in 1610 and 1615, it was 2 anonymous manifestos appeared. In modern Germany. So much of this was really took root in Germany. The mystic kind of Christian vibe this came from like Rumi and Sufi dancers in the Middle East. It really took root in Germany. I don't know why. And their goal was to create a science aimed at universal reformation of mankind based on esoteric truths of the ancient past, which concealed from the average man, provide insight into nature, the physical universe, and the spiritual realm. So this was kind of a hidden trend again that was under everything, and we'll explain why it's hidden, okay? So for what do we presage is not in gross, it's not big, it's not cosmic. For we are the brethren of the rosy cross. We have the Mason word. So that's a kind of a magic word of Masons, Mason craft word. And second sight, things for to come we can foretell. All right. And we're going to listen to a song that represents this. And so Hermetism is going to be all about light and dark and symbols and numerology. So it'll be in things, but it'll be kind of hidden. So this is a song from John Dowland, Flow My Tears from 1597. And his name might be Dowling, so it's possible that he's Irish, which, you know, I'm Irish, so that'll be nice. But we'll have a listen, and you can see, if you see it from this perspective, that it's a hermetic kind of a romantic song. So we'll listen.
You shadows that in darkness dwell, learn to contemplate light.
Happy that in hell the worst is you shadows. Such an amazing song. Anyways, that was a kind of a, you know, a hermit, kind of a more hermitage. And the reason I have it here earlier is because it's a thread. It was, you know, they had secret societies that released books after we're dead. They released books that were anonymous. It's kind of like you're not allowed to talk about it, but it's everywhere. Okay, you know, I'm sure there's things about that, like you could think about like that these days. Okay, so we're going to kick right off into the lowlands, the Protestant Reformation. So the Protestant Reformation, like I said, is protesters, and it started off with Martin Luther, and he said here, Sulfida, faith alone, by faith alone, you don't need any of your rules or your laws. And he was supported by Frederick III, who was a rich prince. So they were in Northern Europe. You can see how Europe was kind of split up there among Lutherans and Calvins and Catholics. It was a total mess. Okay, so this he wrote songs. Martin Luther. He was a poet, and you can see one of his songs here. So he'd write a cantus firmus and then other people were expected to harmonize to it. So he was important in that he wrote in his own language, and that they advised people to read the Bible, which was a threat to the Pope. They wanted it in Latin and no one to know what was going on. And he also advised that the congregation should sing, and they put it to kind of popular songs at the time. It developed this choral tradition, okay? And so one of the great Lutherans is obviously Bach, the greatest, from my esteem, the greatest composer of all time. And we can hear one of his song. This song here, we can hear Martin Luther's song, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God." So this is the war years, the start of the war years. He nailed it up. He said, enough of the Pope. All right, so we'll have a listen and you tell me what you think. We'll see everybody singing, just the giant scale of it. So sound had been organised now, to make political points, to make religious points, to make societal points. And that's definitely a fighting song. So that song is sang on Reformation Day, when they reformed the world, on October the 31st. A mighty fortress is our God. All right, so they weren't messing around. They'd had enough of Rome. They'd had enough of it. All right, so we'll go on and we'll see another page now. Oh, sorry. So we'll look at this revolution in music a little bit more and where it started. It started down here in the lowlands in Bruges, in Netherlands and the Flanders. And one of the earlier people was this Johannes Ochengem. I'm sorry, his name's. And he was an organ player. And so you can see one of his pieces there. You could harmonise along to that now if you use the rules. And this is Messe Proletium, and we can hear it. And you can see that there will be 3-part harmony in it. Okay, so this is the very first. He developed mean tone in and around 1530. So he developed mean tone. So a way of tuning that you could move around keys. You can see there, it looks like 4-part harmony there. 4 lines all doing different things. Now you can hear that the words are all overlapping and you can't really hear the words, and it's using modal music, which means that it kind of meanders around a bit. It'll just kind of wander around, and it's not supposed to really go up or down. It's supposed to just kind of keep you there. So you just walk in, hear it, feel nice, walk out. It goes on. It's infinite, eternal in a way, And modal music is good for that. So it's modal music, but it's polyphonic and it's now scored. And it uses mean tone, which is a new format, and because of that we can move around keys a little bit more, and we can write it down much better. It's a lot more rhythmic, it's a lot more structured, so there's serious development now. We also have the first rules of counterpoint, so a book in around 1480, and so the counterpoint was point upon point, so it showed you how to harmonize, and these were the rules. I'm not going to read the rules, and the rules for counterpoint are continuing to develop today. So the father of electronic music, he's called Messiaen. He was an organ player, and he developed new counterpoints. So if you really want to be taken seriously as a musician, you kind of have to develop. Oh, sorry, the mic moved there slightly. We have to develop your own counterpoint. And so this fella did it. He had 8 rules, and these were published and spread across the world. And so we're going to have a listen to some more music here from Germany and the lowlands. So this is kind of more spiritual, hermetic, mystic kind of. It is Christian, but it's somewhat weird. And so we're going to listen to it. So one is Arnold Schlick here, who's a composer, and he wrote a book and it had typical quotes from the Bible, Aristotle, Boethius, Guido of Rizzio. So we've seen these from the last video. And he also thought that listeners can heal the body and so forth. And he thought that the organ was the best instrument of all because of its extensive polyphony. So there's a cover of the book. And there he is playing the organ, with the organ being bellowed because there was no electricity at the time. So we'll hear this video here. This is chromatic music. Chromatica. So that's chromatic music. It's not tonal or modal. It's a different kind of style. They did use it in Greece as well. But you can see that they're getting quite developed and they're really experimenting now in ways that we don't really anymore, to be honest with you. Another amazing person is Thomas Tallis. And this was for 8 choirs, and each choir had 5 voices, so there's 40 people in all. So this is a form of numerology, kind of spiritual numerology. Now, I'd love to show you this because it's 40 groups of 5 people, but what I want to show you is the sheet notation more so. The sheet notation is just insane. So you can hear the words are overlapping. It's about being meditative, a drone. Kind of sounds a little bit like a canon. You know, it just kind of meanders around its modal. Look at the score. It goes more and more insane. Oh my God! Look at that. So yeah, things were getting serious. All right. So he had this guy. This book is famous because it's 100 songs of polyphonic music, and it was published. 100 polyphonic songs. So that's kind of, people could follow along. And I like this because it was called colorist music. And from one of the things I'm trying to get across here is this idea of multimodal thinking that a lot of polymath people have and harmonic people have, and this idea of mapping colors and hues and brightnesses to music to kind of align the two of them. Okay, so we'll move forward. You can see it's printed movable type as well. So we had a movable type, which is interesting. You could print it, the first printing press. We have another person from Hosqueen from the same place. There's the signature. There he is. He was so famous at the time that he was only needed to know his one name, a bit like Madonna or something like that. He was that famous. Hosqueen. And we listen to him and you'll know why. He's about 500 years old now, and you can see it's an early canon. This is incredible sounding like. So kind of like Frere Jacques, Now, all these religious people, they'd know all these songs, and they're getting to sing them in this new and beautiful way, like a remix, So he's amazing. His music is just so gorgeous. And he also invented new forms of ways of making music. So he invented this sogito cavito. So they're experimenting with textual speech, and we'll see that in a little minute. And so what he tried to do was he tried to map the kind of syllables in a song to the do, re, mi. So if you said oo, you'd say oot. If you said a, you say re. This kind of thing, And so we probably won't be able to hear it here, but it'll give us a chance to listen to another one of his songs. But it's in this song, Hercules. He tries to do it. So it's one of the reasons it sounds so gorgeous and so fit, because it's engineered. It's not just whatever, like, oh, that sounds nice, that sounds nice. No, this is engineering. This is a form of science. This isn't just entertainment. And it's designed to produce physical effects, scientifically. That's what they were aiming for. Okay, so that's his signature over there in the Sistine Chapel. So we can hear that it's starting to get very serious. Now we're going to push on into Italy, another development, all right? So in Italy wasn't no lands, Italy was closer to Rome, and so over in Italy they had a secret societies, okay? They were obsessed with, I think that's on the next slide, is it? Yeah, it's on the next slide. So this basically, what I want to do here is I want to talk about the humanist and scientific movement, okay? So we had, in France, you had people like René Descartes who said, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. He was the ultimate rationalist. He kind of, we can work everything out in our mind. If we just put our minds to it and think about it, we can work everything out. We had Vincenzo Galileo, he was Galileo's father, and he was like, you cannot teach a man anything, you can only help him find it within himself. So that kind of hermetic Greek thing, you know. We can see the religious divisions, all of that was at war with each other, and we can see the David there, so the call back to an earlier times, okay. So there's quite a lot of differences there, okay, but we're going to move on and see how it expressed itself in Italy. So Italy rediscovered the Greek books. They'd come back in, and from Aristos Xenexis, because that was one of the people that we talked about last week, one of the last Greek that we have records of the musicologists, he proposed that speech should be set the pattern for song, resulting in the first Italian opera. So let's just have a kick in and have a listen to it. This is the first Italian opera done in 1573, and these operas were done in private, because, you know, you're not really worshipping the god there, you know, you're kind of doing something a bit funny there now. So they were done in private, and we can see what they look like. So they wanted to bring back musical spoken words and tragedy, and so it's called Stilo Recitativo, proto-opera. So you can hear that there's some basic accompaniment. It's a song. They're singing. There's a drama. You know, it's not just people standing there. There's a bit of, you know, there's a bit. I do love this. I really do enjoy this music. Okay, so it was Greek musical spoken sung tragedy coming from Aristos Xenexis. It was a monody, which is basically a song, old word for a song. You had intelligible lyrics that were easily understood. And Vincenzo Galli, he said 12 tone is all the way. And he made a book of 12 major and 12 minor keys in 1584. That's the first I've seen of that. And he favoured experimentation over rationalism. So he didn't want to just think, kick the tires, make sure, check. So he's really an engineer, more of an engineering approach. So both of these, we're going to listen to. So that was the kind of the first. We're going to listen to the first opera. This is him here. This is him here, Jacobi. Right, he wrote the first opera, and he wrote it about Orpheus, which is a Greek tale, Greek tragedy. And while dancing, Orpheus's wife Eurydice was bitten by a snake and died instantly. Orpheus sang his grief with his lyre and managed to move everything, living or not, in the world. Both humans and gods learned about his sorrow and grief. He went into Hades to rescue his wife, but in the end, he failed. Human hubris. And so you can see the first two operas. The first one was written about, so it's about the greatness of humans in a way, but and you know, it's also about Greek recovering the grief. And we can see a little bit of Claudio's, what it looked like. So these are both about Orpheus. This is Eurydice, and this one is also L'Orfeo, same story. You could see that's like modern music, like, you know, you could have that on TikTok and I think people would like it or not like it, you know, but they would understand it. Now we're just going to get to a bit where I think they all stand up and start jumping around and dancing a bit. Where is it? Do it here? What more to do? Okay, so it's sounding much more modern and kind of, you know, we're getting bigger orchestrations, much more modern. I like this quote here about that it was called the Florentine Camerata. So it wasn't everywhere, it was just in Florence. It was done in private by a handful of people who were obsessed by these Greek books. And one of them in particular had found Aristos Xenexis and said that we should do this. It was coming together of a particular type of people. And here's a reference about that time. Here one felt no weight of the supernatural pressing on the human mind, demanding homage and allegiance. Humanity, with all its distinct capabilities, talents, worries, problems, possibilities, was the centre of interest. It has been said that medieval thinkers philosophized on their knees, but bolstered by new studies, they dared to stand up and rise to their full stature. So they're starting to respect humans again and, you know, get down into the human world again. So this here is, I want to show you a little bit just of how chaotic it started to get. Okay, so we'll just move around a little bit. So we have here Carlo Gesualdo, who's famous for murdering his wife and her lover, and then gone back and, you know, really carrying it out, and then gone off and making these really creepy polyphonic songs about death. And she who could give me life alas kills and will not help me. So it's all chromatic. A lot of people don't like chromatic music, but it's kind of getting a bit spooky and weird. We also have Rossi, and he's going to messing around with all these weird temperaments. So we'll hear that it's Italy, and it's just getting weird as well by Marina Hinker. It's amazing. Alright, so he's messing around with some weird tuning systems. We have another Chromatica here from, this is kind of Jan Schweling. He's amazing. So there's a few people that are incredible on keyboards just before Bach. It was quite a few, but we'll listen to his kind of music, and you'll hear it kind of quickly enough. And all I'm trying to show you here is that the experimentation was going everywhere. We were getting weird chromatic music on organ, we get songs about death, weird tuning music. Alright, it's all getting a little bit funny. I know, I do love that. Just go off and listen to it. We had some more chromatic music on the harpsichord. Oh, did you hear that? The tuning is beautiful. Oh, I love that tuning. Okay, so it's getting a little bit out of control, and in come the church with the Counter-Reformation, and they say enough of this nonsense, right? They've had enough. They're under threat. They're losing money. They're losing control, right? So they organise a couple of councils. One of them that's important for us is called the Council of Trent. And it gave positions against Protestants and what was to be Catholic and what it wasn't. And there was new rules to prevent the abuse of music. And some attempts, even suggestions, to ban polyphony altogether. It was just too crazy. But along came a hero called Palestrina. And he developed the Palestrina style. And so this is an example of the Palestrina style, right? So it's a four-part harmony. And so everybody that wrote for the church now had to do this. So that meant if you really wanted money as a musician, you had to learn this. That was it. So everybody knew this. This was the new standard. This was what you did for church music, and everybody learned this. So mostly motets written for four voices, because then if you have four voices, you just have all of the people that you need. You can have male, women, female, young, old, different types. So it's set in imitative polyphony, so polyphony, not chordal. The meaning of the words, there is word painting. So if they say slow, it'll be like slow, and if they say quick, it'll be quick, quick. It's modal, so it's kind of going to be dreamy. There's the primacy of the text, and also it follows syllables. The clear text, every word should be heard, and the ideal is about sacred polyphony, refined use of dissonance. So if anything is out of tune, it has to be resolved. It has to be tuned back in afterwards, because that is health. All right, and that's God and good things, and it's continuous and meanders around a bit. So we'll have a listen to the Cambridge Singers singing Palestrina Secret Service, which after a while, if you listen to these songs, you just love it. You see, it's a canon again, kind of. It's just intonation, so it's going to be super peaceful. It's modal, so it's not going to have these ugly jumps and pulls of power. It's just going to keep drifting. It's going to, use the solfege in proper ways. So it's designed, it's engineered to just sound beautiful. And hundreds of years later, it sounds beautiful. So that's the Palestrina style, okay? So we're going to move on now to France. I hope this video isn't too long. It's probably very long. There's quite a bit left, I'm afraid. I don't know how much left. Another, 10, 20 minutes. So the rise of France, maybe 5, I don't know. The rise of France. Over here we have Philip the Fair. You can go for a cup of tea, maybe. Philip the Fair in 1268. Kind of a handsome young man. Meant fair as in handsome, not fair as in kind, because it definitely wasn't that. Now you can see France at the time was kind of half controlled by England. Some of it was Rome, we have Burgundy over here, all right? And so Philip had enough of this. You can see he also had his head on a coin. So he's like, I've had enough of this. So he was in debt to the Knights Templar. These are the Knights Templar over here. These were the military soldiers, the crusades going on there. So they also had their heads on coins. And in the end, they kind of became a bank. So if you wanted to travel the roads, you could leave money with them in Italy, and then there'd be another order in France, and you could pick it up. So they were like a bank, that kind of way, And so he was in debt to them. So rather than pay them, he just arrested them all one night and then just burned them at the stake. There he is, there just burning them. It's insane. And he had a problem down here in Aquitaine. You can see it here, right? The border right here. So Aquitaine, if you remember last week, was super important because it is it was the border between France and Spain, which at that time was the border between the Eastern world and the Western world, because Spain was kind of Moorish. So down there was being controlled by England, by Edward I. And he wasn't happy with that, so he says. So Joan of Arc says, "Can I go down there and arrest them?" And she said, "Oh yeah, here you go on down there now, young girl." And then she said she had visions. Off she went, and she was captured, and she was the story of wearing boys' clothes, and she was executed for her wrong thinking. Now after these were all kicked out, weird things did start happening in France, and the evidence of this is the Book of the Courtier, which is this book here from around 50. I don't know when it is. Just show you, it's crazy. And about how to get dates. You can look it up. How much you should know about music. How to be a suave, kind of a sophisticated dude. The Book of the Courtier. So after all of this, France did change, and we're going to look at some of the changes in France, and you'll hear it instantly. This is Jean Lully. All right, this song here is Jean Lully. So this opera is based on, again, a Greek tragedy. We know why, because there was a resurgence of Greek knowledge. It's known as the Musician's Opera. But he has another opera, and it's known as the People's Opera, and he has another one, and it's called King's Opera. So this guy was big, right? And his works were put on for months, years, decades, still put on. Tonal music is a starting point called a home, the first of the diatonics. So do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, da. So you go do, re, mi, and you go up and down. And an end, there's the last note. So the start and the finish, it's complete. Not like modal in that way. Modal goes round and round and round in circles. And easy rules to move around. All diatonic scales are the same. So the diatonic scale is one of the modes. It's either the major mode or the minor mode. So they're all the same. You can easily build predictable narratives with a defined dramatic structure of tension and resolution, and the rules for feeling required per step, and then a safe path home. So this is called functional harmony. It's vertical rather than horizontal. So that means that you stack notes on top of each other rather than building them. You had the cantus firmus, and you'd see the line of it, and you draw a line underneath it. This is different. You have one note and you build stacks on top of it. So clear rhythmic structures, major minor scales, the building blocks, progressions, typical progressions, modulate keys, tones. It became very easy. So let's have a listen, and you'll see the power. It's totally different. Oh my God. That is drama. That's drama. So that's the tonal system. That's what we all listen to these days, diatonic music. So we all listen to the tonal system. We can hear it. It's like if you want to go big, it's tonal. It's huge music. Doesn't meander around the place. So you would see why it was the People's Opera and ran for months and months and months. Like, oh my God. Powerful. But we're going to look at another element, and there's a beautiful little contradiction here that I want to highlight. Okay, it's a beautiful little, what I would call, a certain type of awkwardness in the human race. So we're going to look at, firstly, Mary and Mersenne. So Mersenne's laws are the laws describing, so we're getting acoustics. We're starting with acoustics now, and I'm going to highlight the fight between acoustics and musicians. What's the difference? So Mersenne's laws are laws describing the frequency of an oscillation of a stretched sound or a monochord. So I'm gonna press play.
Experimenters.
And he'll explain himself.
Liberanos amalo. Amen.
He'll explain.
Mersenne
Oh, sorry.
himself made a study of the nature of sound. His love of music made this a natural choice for his inquiring mind. But it was a subject not much studied at that time, and Mersenne was one of the first to do so. He discovered, by experiment, that the pitch of a plucked string is affected by several factors. First, it was proportional to the square root of the tension. Secondly, it was inversely proportional to the length. Thirdly, it was also inversely proportional to the square of the diameter. This formula was Mersenne's own discovery. It was completely new, and actually contrary to the accepted Pythagorean view of the relationship between tension and pitch.
So Europeans are better than the Greeks now.
Mersenne
That's the
wasn't
thought.
content with just an experimental determination of this relationship.
Excuse me.
But why should this law hold? How can I prove mechanically that this law must hold true?
Eternally.
I know that it is true to within the limited precision of my experimental observations.
Useless humans.
But can this formula be proved with the certitude of a mathematical explanation? The tension governs the movement of the string. But what is the nature of this movement? I have determined, using very long strings that vibrate very slowly, the manner in which the string behaves. But what are the physical laws that determine the manner of this vibration and related to the tension? And what are the harmonics of a plucked string? Without changing the length or the tension or any physical aspect, I can cause the string to behave differently.
Monochord in action, my friends. You can see it was a
And
scientific
produce
tool at
notes
the
at
time.
several different pitches. Now this I find puzzling enough, but I have listened deeply to many notes. And I have determined that plucking an open string can produce as many as 5 different tones at the same time.
Okay, I'm going to leave him there. Now, one of the nice little bits of awkwardness that I want to point out about fantastic Marin Mersenne is he was in France, but he was called the post-box of Europe. So he's one of the founding fathers, really, of big science. So if you sent him a letter, it was considered published because he'd tell everyone. All right. So what I like about this, the awkwardness in this is he was one of an early members of something called the Order of Minims, right, which lived a completely minimal existence to the point of where they wouldn't eat meat or milk, or basically vegans as well. So they made beer for us, So what I find awkward is that he lived on his own, a completely minimal life, but he's the person, he didn't talk to anyone, but he's known as the post-box of Europe, a person who started the great scientific communication revolution in communication. I love that little. And we're going to see it here again. A similar outlook on life. Okay, so we have here Joseph Savier, and he invented a French polymath, geometer, same type of person, and known as the father of acoustics. He developed tables demonstrating counting of beats. So you remember I showed you the beats that go in and out of tune? Well, the number, when they were beat, you could count the number of beats and you could tell how much it was in or out of tune by. So he developed an accurate portable monochord sonometer for rapid tuning, so a portable monochord, nice. It was based on 12-tone EDO, completely rational, not based on humans, but just this is good enough, we've made a decision. It's not pure, but it's good enough. We can use this for opera, move around, please crowds, please the king. It's practical, you know. But there is a difference. He had neither a voice nor hearing. He could only think of music. What? He was reduced to borrowing the voice and the ears of someone else, and in return gave hitherto unknown demonstrations to musicians. So he was deaf and dumb. He couldn't hear or speak, but he's the father of acoustics. Isn't that amazing? And there was a fight at the time. Etienne Julie, that fellow there, Lully, was his helper. He was helping. He was a working musician. And he had practical concerns about tuning and audience expectations and, you know, what was useful, what wasn't useful. And he was using kind of more, you know, by ear, by thumb, good enough kind of tuning. And Joseph Savio was using these equal dimensions, like 2 centimeters, and these non-human based things. And Etienne was like, well, this guy is deaf. He can't even hear it. He's just making imaginary things, kind of rational. And Joseph Savio was saying this guy is just kind of, you know, he can't hear the higher maths. He can't hear the higher forms of music. So there's a little bit of a fight there going on at the time. So that was France. We're going to continue in France. There was a book released that showed the first form of figured bass. So if you remember the last time, what had happened is you get the cantus firmus, you get the little hymn, right? And then you'd have to point by point add notes for the hymn going along a line, kind of horizontally. Well, what they started to do was differently. Instead, they give you the bass note, and then they'd put numbers underneath it, and the numbers would indicate the chords you're supposed to play on top, but then you could play those chords in any order that you wanted. So it was kind of like, we just give you the bass notes and then give you suggestions for chords and then improv. So the idea was to improv, and we can see it's some of it in action here. So they're just full notes, and then we have the chords coming in, and you can play those whenever you want. So this is kind of shortcuts in music, and I have problems with shortcuts in music, and we're not going to talk about it in this video, but we will talk about it in another video. Shortcuts are good as long as you know they're shortcutting. Okay, so lastly, we're going to talk about in this, for France, we're going to talk about this guy. I'm not going to try and say it, but The Last Man Who Knew Everything. All right, and so it's another book on musical theory, but I think this one is kind of coming to the point where we're kind of very close to what most people understand as music these days. The beautiful thing about this book, so what I'll do is I'll play it. I'll play the song that from the book, okay? And so this is an incredible book. You can see it online. And so in the book, he's talking about spiders, and then he's talking about the dances that people imitate with people who've been poisoned by these spiders. Then he writes a song about the spiders. Then he draws a map of where the spiders and the songs from that place are. And then what he will start doing is he'll start showing you like the instruments that they make. And he'll start showing you like the curves on those instruments, and then he'll start showing you how to develop bullhorns based on those curves. Then he'll show you the same curves in buildings and bridges. Then he'll show you the same kind of harmonics in light. And so this is called tarantula dance, and it's supposed to imitate how people had danced when they were got bitten by a particular poisonous tarantula. And so there you can see the harmony of the angels. And you know the mondo mondana, and it's all there. So it's quite a beautiful book, you know, and it's well worth looking up. But he was supposed to be the last man who knew everything, and the reason that's important is because we started to get specializing. You know, big science got so big that no one could know everything anymore. It just got to a little bit too big. And then we're going to end this video. We're going to end it on Bach, the king. Just back. Just saying his name makes me happy. That's the truth of it. His music is so great. He stood on top of both systems. He stood on top of the tonal system. He developed the tonal system, really. He stood on top of forms of it. He stood on top of the modal system. He had everything. And then he just mastered. He's an engineer of human souls. So this picture here that we see of him, right, is a picture itself, is a portrait that he had to submit to a mathematical foundation. And rather, you had to submit a painting of yourself. There was no photographs at the time, and he had to submit some mathematics. And so he said, "Well, I'll just do two at once." And in his hand, he has a piece of paper that has a 6-part harmony. So it was seen as a mathematical thing at the time, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the ultimate in religious, spiritual. Bach he said he wanted to organize music for the worship of God. He made hundreds of chorales, and they were all signed "The Glory of God Alone." So we'll just hear what this spiritual engineering is in music. What does it sound like? It sounds like this. Ho ho ho! Yeah! All right. So that was Bach, and that's not a symphony, but it's the first of the symphonies. So you needed 2 orchestras to put together the Mass in B, but that's not the real motivation. So everyone would think 2 orchestra, go big, go big or go home, like for the court, bigger, bigger, better. But no, his motivations were completely different. It required 2 orchestras, but actually what it required was every musician in Leipzig, the town in which he lived. So how many musicians does it take to put on the Mass in B? Every musician alive in Leipzig at the time. It's different. Now you can imagine the amount of structure and harmonic awareness and harmonic knowledge, and just to be able to organise something and tune and get something so massive to all work together and sound harmonic and actually provide a function to the human body, provide an engineered good. Okay, so we're going to push on a little bit to just explain why he's so good. I'm not going to play all these videos, but I know we all want to see this, so it's hilarious. So this is called a chorale, and he made 235 of these. They're each about 20 minutes long. He made one for every Sunday for about 30 years, and each one of them shows you how to do 4-part harmony. So the top line is the hymn, and then all the other 3 lines, the cantus firmus, and the other 3 lines are what Bach made up. So it's kind of like a little puzzle. You can go in and you can find the hymn, and you can make your version, and go off and hear the master's version, and kind of go, all right, further. So this is what everyone learned from. Everyone learned from these chorales and his motets, including Beethoven, and Mozart read them. Mozart was trained by his son, C.P.E. Bach, and he read all the motets. Tchaikovsky could play them, Beethoven could play. Chopin said the only way to improve is to play more Bach. So it just goes on and on and on. And we're just going to see one of his fugues, which is kind of like a canon. We'll hear it 4 times. And the reason I'm showing you this fella here is because Tom Koopman, he's an amazing man if you want to look him up. He kind of brought back early music in Germany again, obviously. This is like techno, I think. We hear it coming in again now. It'll come in again. Now the thing about Bach is it's his music is so great because you want to hear good cello. You wouldn't think you could listen to 2 hours and 20 minutes of cello until you do, and it slightly changes your life and you want to listen to it again. So this is Rostropovich, which has been my recommendation, my friends, for listening to Bach's cello suite. It's incredible. Of course, if you want to check out your skills as an instrumentalist, you would want to see if you can play your instrument. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You want to see if you can play your instrument, and this is insane. A tin whistle? Master of rhythm, master of melody, master of orchestration. So if you want to test out an instrument, you're going to see if it can play Bach. All right, because Bach just made the notes. He just wrote the notes. He didn't really write down articulation. He only wrote the notes. And so you can go in and you can steal his notes. Now, one of the complaints is he wrote too many notes, but we'll have a listen to what that means when you just write the notes. It's not about how you play it or the instrument you play it on. It's just the harmonics. That's why Bach is so great, because it doesn't matter what you play it on. It'll always sound like Bach. It'll always sound amazing. All right. So that's a toccata. Toccata means fast touch, kind of like shredding. So that's me just showing you that Bach is the greatest. He kind of stands on top of all of that system, and basically it's all about Bach for, basically the next couple of 100 years. So I'm going to show you the last, this is the last one. We're going to try and emphasize the coming fight. So what I wanted to kind of get a point across is, I'm going to use these Greek gods as a method. There are two Greek gods of music. They have two of everything. There's Bacchus, because they love all things that humans do. Good, there's no good and bad. There's just what humans do, and then how are we going to use that to make humans better? That's it. There's no good and bad with the Greeks in a way. So two Greek gods of music. Bacchus on one side and Apollo on the other. So we're going to look at Bacchus. Bacchus is the ancient Greek god of fertility, wine, ecstasy, madness, and theatre. So he's got venues. You can see him there holding out the cup of wine there. You will. And you can think of him being like analog warmth. We need the analog warmth for the audience. And you can think of him having particular venues like clubs, festivals, bars, crowd participation, all getting like, come on, lads. That's music. And we could think of that in terms of cognition as being a very real woman. That very real woman is very hot and she's very real and she's very right there. So they have practical concerns like Etty and Lolly. There's an audience. I need practical solutions. And then we could think of Apollo. Apollo is the god of organised music, patterned dance, truth, healing and poetry. And we could think of that as being digital accuracy. They're both producers. We know that fight that goes on, guitarists versus synthesists, digital accuracy versus analog warmth, and so on. That the old fight, the old musician fight goes on. Practical concerns versus more esoteric concerns, we could say. So Apollo is abstract and theoretical. So Palestrina striving for perfect balance and clarity. Joseph Xavier, scientific approach. Later serialism, mathematical approaches. Bacchus is Lully, Etienne Louls, later folk music and jazz. And so right in the middle, we have us, poor old monkeys. This particular monkey is Ham, the space ape. He's done more than most humans. He went off up into space. He flew around the orbit. He came back down, and then it's a good, nice story. He went off to a zoo to meet his friends. And so he's just in the middle, trying to ride the two gods, try to ride the middle between the two of them, hope it happens. So in the next video, my friends, I don't know when it's going to be. So if you want it, I would like and subscribe, or definitely subscribe and hit the bell, because it might be in another couple of months, to be honest with you, because I'm back to work now. But what we could do, in the next one, I'm going to skip most classical music, and I'm going to jump right into 1989, the World's Trade Fair, where gambling music makes its impact into European music and harmonic thinking. So that's it, my friends. That's it for this long video. I hope it was some use to you. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, say thanks, and say something in the comments. It's nice. I enjoy it. Okay, bye, my friends. Thank you. Bye, 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 bye.